Hi everyone, I'm Gina Minardi and I'm a licensed therapist who got fed up with therapy. This is a one-woman show about my journey of finding the spaces between non-traditional approaches of healing. What I learned is that there's no one right way to heal, and you truly are your best resource. Therapists and healers are meant to support you on your path, but they don't have all of the answers. You do. This show is about the spaces between laughter, tears, thoughts, ego, soul, messy growth, and moments of joy. It's about personal liberation, inner knowing, and the tools that get you there. I will cover topics that make many of us uncomfortable and interviewing people who are willing to go there. I've spent thousands of hours listening to human beings navigate their life story, from rehabs in Malibu to homeless shelters in East LA, and now my private practice. It has been some of the most profound, painful, and beautiful moments in my life. Thank you so much for joining me. Hello, friends, and welcome back to Spaces Between. I have been digesting and thinking a lot about the interview that I had with Dr. Whitney Yu in the episode before. And if you didn't tune into that, what Dr. Yu and I talked about were some pretty heavy topics, such as the overturn of Roe v. Wade, mass shootings in America, and feeling like we are regressing into dark times. At one point in the interview, after her and I discussed feelings of rage, hopelessness, and despair, I mentioned to her that I thought self-compassion was the missing key. In the moment, as this often happens in interviews, I wasn't even quite sure where that was coming from. Yet it was from the space of the innermost knowing, with a capital K, inside of me and my soul. I continued to talk with her about how I feel this country is mired in intergenerational trauma and needs deep healing, which is ultimately rooted in oppression, systemic racism, and the patriarchy. That a large population of this country lives from a space of the primitive and survival part of the brain, the limbic system, versus the frontal cortex, which is the evolving part of the brain that is responsible for self-regulation, self-soothing, and what many spiritual teachers will say is the part of the brain responsible for the sacred pause. So before I go into talking about why I feel self-compassion and compassion are the missing key in this country, I'd like to tell a recent story of what solidified my need to go on a deep dive into this subject after the interview with Dr. Yu. So I was surfing one day with my girlfriends at a point break called Pitus in Ventura. I was paddling awkwardly with my baby bump and looked over to the right and saw a Trump flag blowing in the wind on one of the beach houses. I felt that feeling rise up in my body. The rush and sensation of rage, judgment, and sadness percolating through the cells of my body. The feeling of, oof, I am already judging the people who live in this house. I looked at my friend Katie and I said to her, this might be heavy to bring up surfing, but what do you think we can do to work out nasty feelings with other humans who we don't agree with? I went on to tell her that I honestly don't understand why anyone would get behind Trump or his policies, as basic human rights and equality are at the core of who I am. But somehow I need to understand why a huge number of people voted for him, albeit it was not the majority. That I remember the day that I was watching Trump in the race to become president when he stood on national television and made fun of a person with a disability who was attending his rally. I have been a behavioral aide off and on for years in my earlier adult life before becoming a therapist for children, teens, and adults with intellectual, physical, and developmental disabilities. In that moment, while watching national television, I was horrified that this was the presidential candidate. I'm not going to go into all the reasons that I think Trump is a human who needs serious mental health treatment and that the justice system of America needs to hold him accountable for a litany of unconstitutional acts, but rather I'd like to take responsibility for the part of me that is part of the divide. The part of me who would rather other another human being versus look to myself first. The part of me that wants to rip those flags down and maybe let my dog Lou poop all over them. If we are to heal in this country, we need to honor the shadow that exists in every single one of us. I honor that there is a rage that lives within me and my shadow, but I am willing to be open to healing that part of myself. So now I will go on to the topic of today, which is self-compassion, and why I think this is the solution, or rather, it's part of the evolution of humanity and the planet staying habitable for all of us. I will be referencing 3 talks by 3 brilliant female psychologists, one being Dr. Nicole LaPera, Dr. Kristen Neff, and of course, Tara Brach. I'll start with some of the points that I highlighted by a recent talk of Tara Brach. She says, when we look at the violence in the world, the racism, the injustices, if we look at it closely, how we relate to others as bad other, and they become the enemy. If we really investigate, it's only because we are unable to meet our own dragons. The aggression, the fear, with a quality of compassion. But when we start facing the fear and facing our vulnerabilities with a sense of kindness, then we don't project badness onto others. The more we look at others and see the vulnerability, the humanness, and the goodness, there is an understanding of the compassion for ourselves and then ultimately others. How are each of us relating to the strong and reactive layers in us? What does it feel like when we get stuck? Is there a part of you that's hurting, that feels helpless? Attacking ourselves for emotional reactivity is another dragon or layer of aversion. Our identity gets hitched because we are not in presence. We get so addicted to proving ourselves in being right. How wars are fought is who is right. Do you want to be right, or do you want to feel love and connected with other human beings? Instead of proving ourselves right, we need to put aside that for loving and connection. When we are at war with ourselves, it is very difficult to have connection and intimacy with others. How do we come into a wise relationship with ourselves and our life? You need to have tea with your pain. What does this mean, to have tea with your pain? Well, it's an embodied experience. And you allow yourself to feel what you are feeling, the rage, the grief, the fear, the sadness, the hopelessness, etc. It is possible to pause. There is a fresh possibility to see it. What part of you is saying, please love me? Imagine a tender presence or energy field around you. So here are some steps of having tea with your pain. Number 1, we have to see that the dragon is there. The rage, the grief, the righteousness, the fear. We have to have the sacred pause instead of having the chain reaction from the limbic system. You need to see the dragon, investigate the dragon, and what's really going on. You can't have tea with the dragon if you don't investigate where that energy lives in you. The chest, the stomach, the heart, etc. Number 2, it's an abstract witnessing and practice in mindfulness. You have to be in your body. Number 3, then ask, what's under the dragon? Sadness, overwhelm, needing love? We need to feel that. Prayer is ultimately the bridge from longing to belonging. We start feeling love itself. Having tea and attending and befriending the pain. It is an essential alchemy in the spiritual path of awakening. It takes courage and presence but there will be a shift of identity. You move from I am the dragon, I hate that I am the dragon, to then loving the dragon. Yeah, but when the dragons come, they are often so strong and they become so intense, we can't really invite them to tea or really know how to. Because ultimately, we get wounded in relationship and we need to heal in a relationship. So we need to include others to meet these energies with a full presence. We are not separate. We have to wake up together. So I'd like you to imagine drawing a circle in your hand. This is where you are living. It's a place of fear, a place of anguish, a place of rage, a place of hurt. You have to feel those feelings. But around the circle, there is forgiveness and divinity surrounding you. The loving energy of the universe that is merciful, that your basic essence of your being is goodness. We have to feel a sense of belonging to others. The patriarchal mythology is to take a sword and slay the dragons, but that is not the case. There needs to be tenderness, warmth, and heart. Seize the vulnerability and responds with care. That's how we relate to the dragons. Also, no one does this by themselves. We all need help. A human being searching for the home in themselves, which we all belong. Under our dragons, our reactions, there is a real longing beneath. But we need some way of being able to pause. What's under there? When we start this practice, we begin to see the goodness in others behind the mask. The separation dissolves. You are not other, we are in this together. There is a shift in identity instead of the bad self or the bad other, because we have all paused to say yes to the life that is here. I'm going to pause with all of you listening to check in with you. How did all of this make you feel? Did it piss you off? Does it seem ridiculous that peace really can begin with ourselves and having tea with our reactivity? That we actually can soften into a deeper connection with each other and ourselves? One thing that I want to be very clear about in this talk is that you don't have to be on a quote unquote spiritual path of awakening to bring these practices into your life. They don't also equal weakness or being passive in a time in history when we all need to be taking action. Self-compassion and healing is just a huge part of the equation, along with voting, volunteering, protesting, and right action for human rights and equality. This is not about spiritual bypassing or creating more comfort. It is actually quite the opposite. It is learning to be with and heal your pain so you are less a part of the chain reaction of reactivity and violence. Example I'll use is from me from the beginning. Fantasies of me ripping down Trump flags and letting my dog poop all over them. Would you say that that is skillful action from the top down of my brain, or one from the bottom up, from the limbic system, the brain that has not learned the sacred pause or emotional regulation and soothing? So how do I sit with my own reactivity and pain? So I would say that I would only be adding to the fuel and fire and deeper separation and divide with my previous fantasy. Okay, so I will continue wrapping up some of the Tara Brach wisdom. She says, a society rooted in compassion is a more evolved society. How can we meet the personal and collective suffering right now, friends? As women's rights are overturned, the protection of the environment, handguns are made legal in public, and this is all against the majority. We forget our resilience and what our ancestors survived in incredibly harsh times when we've experienced things in the past like the Black Plague, slavery, the Great Depression, and ultimately we have been working towards a society that's less violent, and it is. We forget the amazing resilience of life. We forget that the trajectory and evolution of humanity has been towards less violence and more collaboration. We forget that the big stressors can bring untapped creativity and intelligence. We need a larger view and to remember the vastness of things. Science says that the universe began from a singular point, and where did that point begin from? And the universe continues to expand. Is this all a beginning with an endless experience? And the mind can't really grasp that. Within this, there's a mystery. And within that mystery, there's love and beauty and poetry. The earth was once a molten rock, and now it can sing opera. The essence of this teaching is that you already have clarity and kindness and open-heartedness and loving awareness within you. It is the essence of who you are. The reason we get stuck is because there is a lack of awareness when the primal energies arise. They are denied or avoided, or in some way we pull away from what's going on. And when the shadow is not faced individually and collectively, it becomes a destructive force. When self-hatred is not processed, it is externalized outward as blame and shaming of others. Fear of others makes the other less human. Our choices and actions are driven by primitive fear. Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas said, at a Supreme Court level, 90% of our decisions are made by emotions. The other 10% is for the rationalization of our decision. That is a chilling percentage that these decisions are made primarily from primitive emotions of fear, anger, and aversion. And whenever the dominant strata of society feels threatened, which is predominantly white Christian male, they become more threatened, more cruel, more hateful, more violent, more punishing, and more oppressive. And when others are caught up in the shadow and their unprocessed feelings, their violence brings up our shadow. It's contagious. We get angry and hateful towards them. We then react in aggressiveness. It only perpetuates suffering, and then we fall deeper and deeper into the dark ages. So what are some of the greatest teachings of spiritual teachers like Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and Nelson Mandela? That hatred never ceases by hatred, but by love alone is healed. Martin Luther King calls it the soul force. It's helpful to know that love and compassion are not weak. They're helpful forces and forces in action. There is a spiritual crisis of white America, and it's the calling of our time. There is no way to bridge differences if there's not kindness or trust. The evolution of consciousness does not come from beating our neighbor. It happens when there is a bridging of the divide, and it happens when there is connection, collaboration, and care. What the world needs the most is our presence, and it needs us to meet our shadow and whatever is arising with awareness, presence, and an open heart. Now on to the work of Dr. Kristin Neff, who has done extensive research and writing on the topic of self-compassion. And I'm going to give you a quick synopsis of her approach, but also practical tools and things that you can apply in your life in this next section. There are several books and workbooks that you can find online if you'd like to do a deeper dive. Okay, so first, Dr. Neff defines self-compassion as treating yourself the way you would treat a friend who's having a hard time, even if your friend blew it or is feeling inadequate or just facing a tough life challenge. Through self-compassion, we become the inner ally versus the inner enemy. She defines it as involving 3 core elements that we bring to bear when we are in pain: self-kindness, common humanity, and mindfulness. Number 1, self-kindness. When we make a mistake or fail in some way, we are more likely to beat ourselves up than put a supportive arm around our own shoulder. Think about all of the generous, caring people you know who constantly tear themselves down. This may even be you. Self-kindness counters this tendency so that we are caring towards ourselves as we are towards others. Rather than being harshly critical when noticing our shortcomings, we are supportive and encouraging and aim to protect ourselves from harm. Instead of attacking and berating ourselves for being inadequate, we offer ourselves warmth and unconditional acceptance. Similarly, when external life circumstances are challenging and feel too difficult to bear, we actively soothe and comfort ourselves. I will go a little bit further with this, and this is where I also feel that reparenting comes in, which many of us in this society need. Number 2, common humanity. A sense of interconnectedness is central to self-compassion. It's recognizing that all humans are flawed, works in progress, that everyone fails, makes mistakes, and experiences hardship in life. Self-compassion honors the unavoidable fact that life entails suffering for everyone, without exception. While this may seem obvious, it's so easy to forget. We fall into the trap that things are supposed to go well and that something has gone wrong when they don't. Of course, it's highly likely, in fact, inevitable, that we'll make mistakes and experience hardships on a regular basis. This is completely normal and natural, but we don't tend to be rational about these matters. Instead, not only do we suffer, we feel isolated and alone in our suffering. When we remember that pain is part of the shared human experience, however, every moment of suffering is transformed into a moment of connection with others. The pain I feel in difficult times is the pain you feel in difficult times. Number 3, mindfulness. Mindfulness involves being aware of moment-to-moment experience in a clear and balanced manner. It means being open to the reality of the present moment, allowing all thoughts, emotions, and sensations to enter awareness without resistance or avoidance. Mindfulness counters the tendency to avoid painful thoughts and emotions, allowing us to feel the truth of our experience even when it's unpleasant. At the same time, mindfulness prevents us from being absorbed by and over-identified with negative thoughts or feelings, from getting caught up and swept away by our aversive reactions. She goes on to discuss the yin and yang of self-compassion. Again, I really condensed this for you all, so if you want to go deeper into it, look into her work. So the yin of self-compassion attributes to being with ourselves in a compassionate way. So comforting, soothing, and validating ourselves. Those are the 3 tenets of the yin. So a side note is what many of us didn't experience in families with trauma, or parents that were emotionally immature or had the inability to emotionally regulate or self-soothe. Thus, we didn't. Okay, so we learned things like stonewalling, shutting down, yelling, etc., etc. The yang of self-compassion is about acting in the world. So protecting, providing, and motivating ourselves. So what are aspects of self-compassion that you need right now? Yin. So let's think about comforting. Comforting is something that we might do for a dear friend who is struggling, and it refers to helping a suffering person feel better, especially by providing support for his or her emotional needs. So again, flip that and think about comforting your own emotional needs. Soothing is also a way to help ourselves feel calmer, more grounded, and anchored. Validating. We can also help ourselves by understanding and validating what we are going through if you're feeling alone or misunderstood. Learning how to validate your own feelings versus always seeking out the external of somebody else to validate your tough feelings. So here are some examples of soothing, comforting, and validating ourselves. You can put 1 or 2 hands on your body in a warm, caring, and gentle way. We can help ourselves to feel safe and connected. So something I'm going to say also as an aside to this is when I first started practicing this, and many of the aspects of self-compassion, they would feel cheesy or they would feel forced, and it didn't really feel natural to me. You just have to keep trying and practicing, which is why it's a mindfulness practice. So the first one, staying in the physical, you can try one hand over your heart, two hands over your heart, one hand on your heart and one on your belly, one hand on your cheek, and crossing your arms and giving yourself a gentle and compassionate hug. You can also say to yourself in tough moments, this is a moment of suffering. Suffering is a part of life. May I be kind to myself. May I give myself what I need. May I begin to accept myself as I am. May I forgive myself. May I be patient. So a physical practice of anchoring is you stand up and you feel the soles of your feet on the floor. Rock a little forward and backward and a little bit side to side, making little circles with your knees, feeling the changes of the sensations in the soles of your feet. Anchor your awareness in your feet. So validating yourself. Examples are, it's okay to be a mess. It's okay to be imperfect. Or, wow, I really screwed up. I wish I hadn't, but I did. It's really tough and hard to feel this way. There's nothing I can do to change the fact that I am an imperfect human being who sometimes gets things wrong. May I try to accept myself with understanding and kindness. Now on to the yang, protecting. So this is feeling safe from harm, and protecting means saying no to others who are hurting us or even the harm that we inflict on ourselves, often in an unconscious way. Providing means giving ourselves what we really need. First, we need to know what we need. Then we need the conviction that we deserve to get our needs met. And then we need to go ahead and meet our needs. No one can do this for us better than we can do it for ourselves. Motivating. Most of us have dreams and aspirations that we would like to realize in this lifetime. We also have smaller short-term goals. Self-compassion motivates like a good coach with kindness, support, and understanding. So here are some examples of the yang: protecting, providing, and motivating. So with protecting, first ask yourself, what do you need to feel safe? Okay. Now, I also, again, would like to make a gentle side note. This is outside of moments of experiencing extreme trauma. These are just in, I would say, kind of our daily life experience, asking yourself what you need to feel safe. So take refuge and feelings of safety in ordinary activities. Go for a walk, shower, wash the dishes mindfully, take a deep breath, or practice the anchoring exercise that I talked about before. So providing. Write some ideas of how you might try to meet your needs yourself. For instance, if you would like a sign of being cared and nurtured for, what does that mean for you? Does that mean maybe buying flowers for yourself? Or if you need more physical touch, can you get a weekly massage? Or if you can't afford that, can you hold your own hand or even caress yourself? Can you let yourself know that you are loved and supported by using kind language with yourself? It may seem a little bit silly and ridiculous at first, but if we get in the habit of meeting our own needs, we will be less dependent on others for emotional fulfillment when we have more available resources to give to ourselves. Next one is motivating. Find your compassionate voice instead of your critical voice. Learn how your inner critic may be trying to help you, and learn how to motivate yourself with a new inner compassionate self. Most people find it especially surprising that our inner critic and our inner compassionate self are often seeking the same behavior change. The message simply has a very different quality or tone. Someone might say that their inner critic used to always scream, "You bitch, get your work done." But the inner compassion itself says, whoa, whoa, tiger, you have a lot to attend to on your plate. So notice the difference in that? Okay, next one. So actually, I'm going to move into Dr. Nicole LaPera because I feel like this is a lot for you guys to digest on self-compassion. And I'm just going to go into a little bit of a dive on her work. So she states, before we can extend compassion to another, we have to first extend it to ourselves. We have to become aware of our own suffering. Compassion is an aligned state of being, the spiritual essence that is me, that runs through each and every one of us, core state of being that you already are. You don't need to become this, it is inherent in you. When we are connected to our hearts, we want to relieve the suffering of others. The opposite of compassion is heartless, merciless, cold-hearted, and inhuman. So on that note, I'm going to just move into wrapping it up as you are all taking this in. And I do feel like, though, ending on the opposite of compassion really sends it home to all of us. Because is this the world that we want to inhabit? One that is heartless, merciless, cold-hearted, and inhuman? I don't think so. So the place we need to tend to first is the home in our hearts, to extend this love and compassion to ourselves so it is energetically and actively extended outwards to society, to those we disagree with, to those who don't vote the same as us, to those who have different belief system, and to find our common humanity and interconnectedness. So something that I like to do on a daily basis is after I meditate, in a space of prayer, or I would just say contemplation, I do a metta meditation, which is loving kindness, which starts with myself, moves towards other humans that I find difficulty with or would even deem, on the other side. And lastly, I send it out to all sentient beings on the planet. So it goes like this, and I'd just like you to take a moment to get still, take a breath, and let these words wash over you. May I be happy. May I be healthy. May I be free from suffering. May I be free from fear. May I be at peace. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you be free from suffering. May you be free from fear. May you be at peace. May all beings be happy. May all beings be healthy. May all beings be free from suffering. May all beings be free from fear. And may all beings be at peace. So to all of you, I am extending love and compassion. And understanding that all of us are navigating these times on the planet, which feel extreme, in our own ways. So again, sending love and support, and have a beautiful, beautiful day. Thank you for tuning in. Bye. Hi, friends. If you have been enjoying Spaces Between, please take a moment to subscribe, and leaving a review is the cherry on top. Thank you so much, and I look forward to connecting with you next week.